Welcome to Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 8, Episode 4, presented by Salonis. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
Our very special guest on this episode, recorded live in person in New York City at the NRF Big Show, is Jane Ewing, Senior Vice President, Sustainability, Walmart.
Well, we've been wanting to do a sustainability-focused episode for quite a while, and for various reasons, we couldn't quite make it happen up until now. And yeah, we seized the opportunity to, well, we had to drag Jane all the way down to the far reaches of the Javits Center up
North building here, the South
3
building,
escalators or something. Yeah. But it was, well, I hope she feels it was worth the journey. I definitely felt like it was worth the journey. So yeah, it's a great conversation.
Well, if nothing else, she got her steps in. So there you go. But it is a great conversation. So we'll get to that in a little bit. And yeah, it's great to have a topic like sustainability, so relevant. And she's an excellent executive to talk about all the range of issues. Now, there's some news coming out of the publishing world last week, which we wanted to share with the listeners because it has a bit of an impact on the launch of your new book, right?
Yes, this was rather unexpected. Definitely was not on my bingo card. My publisher, well, at this point, actually, the deal has gone through, is being acquired or has been acquired. And so because of some of the transition issues, there's some system stuff, but mostly it has to do with the change of distribution companies. So I don't want to get in the weeds too much on this. But the net of it is we collectively decided that it would be a good thing to push the publication date out a few weeks. So people who have been listening to it or have pre-ordered the book may actually already have gotten a notice that the publication date for Leaders Leap is moving from March 12th to April 23rd. So just a few weeks. So if you've pre-ordered the book, you will have gotten a notice, most likely. If you haven't pre-ordered the book, I'm not sure what you're waiting for, but you should still go ahead and do that. But you'll have to wait just a bit longer and probably hear me do the shameless self-promotion even more than usual.
Well, let's get right into the news of the week. So I was thinking when I was reading this, maybe we should have saved it for May 4th. Walmart, the Empire Strikes Back.
You know, we as you mentioned, we recorded Jane at the NRF, and then we had just slotted this in for release this particular week. But it did turn out to be a fairly consequential week for Walmart news. Several things came out of the fine folks in Bentonville. One is just for context, and this was in an article that talks more about the news I'll mention in a second, but just some reminders about the scale and scope of Walmart. They are at $600 billion in sales. Wow. They now have 10,000 stores globally. They have 1.5 million employees just in the United States alone. They currently command, I believe this is the North American number, 25% of all groceries and continue to pick up share as best as most data. I don't know that they report that, but as far as we can tell. So just
and I think they make money doing this, right? And I think they make, unlike some companies we talked about.
I was going to say, yes, and they actually are quite profitable.
Yeah.
But this week they made some news really around two things. One is their commitment to raise store managers' salaries up to as much as $400,000 a year.
It's a huge job, right? Lots of responsibility and they can make a big difference in the job.
Sure. Well, not only do they have to deal with the vast number of employees in some of their bigger stores, but, the more that stores have become fulfillment hubs, you got all sorts of complexity. They represent Walmart in the community. We'll get into that a little bit with Jane. But they're also adding stock options to the package. They're doing a 3-for-1 stock split to, in general, make shares more affordable to kind of the rank and file. Those of you who know about financial theory know that doesn't actually make the company any more valuable. It's just math, but it does lower the price point and make it easier for folks without huge means to be able to buy some shares. But the second piece was how they continue to really lean into the growth of physical stores. So, I just mentioned they've got 10,000 stores globally, and we know that they are planning on doing more global expansion. We talked with Judith McKenna, the just retired head of international for Walmart last year. But they're going to open 150 new supercenters. So that's a pretty big number for a relatively mature brand. It's kind of hard to imagine there are many places that can still take on a Walmart, but particularly these very large stores.
I think they got like 4,200 or something, 4,500 stores in the U.S. Like that's, as you say, it's not like, there's already a lot of Walmarts.
Yes, definitely. And then the other part is, so that I believe is going to be done over about 5 years. So it's not all next year. But this year, or in the next year, they're planning to remodel 650 stores. So, they continue to really invest in physical retail. Now, some of that is, updating the stores, modernizing new technology, the fulfillment capabilities, all those kinds of things. But it's really a tremendous commitment, I think, to brick and mortar or hybrid retail. And this comes on top of just, as you mentioned, they actually make money and continue to grow. I think one of the things that's interesting, just to kind of tie it a little bit to my book, is, it was pretty courageous if you go back, 5-6 years when there was this retail apocalypse narrative, when there was this, Amazon is going to make some of these big superstore concepts irrelevant.
Yep.
And largely under Doug McMillon's leadership, for them to make some of these leaps into new technology, into investment in these stores over the last few years. That wasn't an obvious thing to do, but it's really paid off. In fact, I was just looking at how well the stock has done in the last 5 years, and their shares are up 77%. And there's a lot of retailers that have had a hard time even just staying even over that time period.
Let's move on to the next topic. We've got some numbers coming out from the U.S. In terms of employment, but at the same time, you've also got retail layoffs. So kind of a mixed bag of news in terms of people.
Yeah, well, I think Wall Street in general was really surprised by the strength in the jobs market. The U.S. added 350,000 jobs, which was like, I think, 3 times the amount that people expected. And the unemployment rate, which is already quite low, it's been under 4%, I think, for well over a year now, actually went down further. And that was not at all what people were anticipating. And I think one of the reasons why people weren't anticipating that so much was we've actually seen an increase, not just in retail, but just even within retail beyond the Macy's and Wayfair and eBay layoffs we talked about a week or two ago. We're seeing a lot of other layoffs. UPS announced 12,000 jobs to be eliminated. REI is in its 3rd round of layoffs. REI is not a huge retailer, but pretty good sized national retailer. They're getting rid of 200 jobs at headquarters, plus about a bunch of others throughout the regional. And then if you go more globally, pretty big news out of John Lewis, the big department store operator in the UK. They haven't been specific about what they're going to do, but they've indicated over the next few years that they think they're going to eliminate up to 11,000 jobs. That's a pretty big number. Flexport, which is like UPS in the logistics business, 15% headcount reduction. They also had some layoffs a few months back. And then the last one I was going to mention, which, these are international companies, but that wouldn't affect the US, but H&M, they're eliminating 1,500 jobs. They also announced a new CEO, as well as some store closings. They're closing 1/4 of their Spanish stores. So their business is struggling a bit, presumably from the more direct competition, particularly in Spain, from Zara, which is based in Spain, but also Temu, Shein, and Uniqlo and others. So
and Primark. We went to the beautiful Primark store in Primark, Barcelona last time we were there.
As we saw last year, there were quite a lot of layoffs that were announced, particularly in the tech space, but that didn't make a dent really in the unemployment figures. Yeah. So, we got to kind of keep this in perspective. But it does seem like the pace of layoffs among the struggling retailers seems to be picking up, but perhaps it's just kind of an anomaly that it happened to happen all in this last 7 or 8 days.
All right, let's get on to earnings. Like the first wave is out, and there's a lot of earnings. There's a lot of earnings to talk about. Let's start with Amazon.
Yeah, well, one thing to mention, which perhaps most people know, is that most retailers have a end of January quarterly close. So we won't hear those, I guess, basically about another month. But there are a few outliers that report on the calendar year. So that's what we've been getting this past week. So Amazon was the big one, and it was another blockbuster quarter.
Yeah.
I think this is now 2 or 3 in a row. So kudos to Andy Jassy and team. A year ago for the quarter, they barely broke even. This year, they made $10 billion in profits.
Just amazing, right? The turnaround, wow.
But that's not all. They had a $32 billion swing in profits for the entire year. So how many companies even do $32 billion in revenue, right? Like that's That's a very, very short list. But to do that in profits is pretty darn impressive. Overall sales were up 14%. Now, I think the important thing to point out, I think we pointed out last quarter, is that services, which is really the B2B part of Amazon as opposed to the business to consumer, continues to grow disproportionately. I think retail was up about 9% or online and then Whole Foods essentially. But if you look at the service components, the ad business, which is hugely profitable, was up 27%. As a reminder, Amazon controls about 75% of retail media at this point. So they are by far the biggest player. Third-party sales for, so is the marketplace providers and where Amazon provides fulfillment as a service to other retailers, that was up 20%. That's also presumably a very, very profitable piece of the business. And then AWS, which most people kind of continue to think about as the one thing that makes money at Amazon, which is demonstrably not true. But nevertheless, that narrative continues. That continues to slow down, but still 13% growth. So that's quite a big contributor to overall sales and overall profit. So very, very good quarter. And they indicated, amid many retailers looking like they're quite worried about at least the first part of the year, Amazon, I believe, indicated that the sales they expected to be up 8 to 12%, and that they would have at least a similar increase in profitability.
Let's talk about the opposite side of success. But Peloton released some pretty tough numbers.
Well, this has been the, I don't know how many disappointing quarters in a row for Peloton. Obviously, as I'm sure most people would know, there was quite a boom during the peak of COVID, and it's been really, really difficult ever since. Their revenue was down just a low single-digit number, I want to say. But if you look at kind of the trajectory there, the revenue part seems to be pretty close to stabilizing, but profits are continuing to prove quite challenging. They did reduce their losses relative to the same quarter last year and the cash going out the door, but they're still at even with that improvement, they're still at a 23% negative operating margin. So that's a good distance away from breaking even, at least. Yeah. And they also gave a relatively poor outlook. So the stock took a huge hit. Longtime listeners may remember that I predicted that Peloton would get acquired, in particular by Nike, which for various reasons, it didn't happen, and I don't think it's going to happen. But I actually thought that that Peloton might look like a deal worth taking, but it still kind of looks like the proverbial catching a falling knife at this point. So unless somebody has amazing synergy, I think Peloton's going to have to continue to try to see if they can get this thing to some degree of at least break even.
All right, well, let's talk about Apple earnings. Just out, just like their Vision Pro has been released. What did you think of their numbers?
Well, they were, it's kind of funny. I mean, they were generally considered to be pretty good, but their sales were only up 2%. Now, this is the most recent iPhones have been a little bit slower in sales, but I think the big headwind has been China, which continues to still be a very difficult, but a considerable piece of their business. So that's the main problem, and I don't think there's any sense that China is going to rebound dramatically in the near future. But they managed, even with just this pretty anemic sales growth, they managed to get their profits up by 16%. So they were able to do a good job of managing to the bottom line. The other thing that struck me, and I've heard this before, but I hadn't looked at it in a while, is just how much cash Apple has. They've got $40 billion. We keep getting all around all these big billion numbers, the Walmart, the Amazon numbers, just this massive amount of, it's hard to wrap your head around numbers this big. But yeah, $40 billion of cash on the balance sheet.
Wow. All right, let's talk about LVMH. We had a great interview with their president of North America, and he was very enthusiastic about the market and the overall sense of luxury retail. Seemed to have pretty good numbers.
Yeah, despite some of the kind of lackluster performance we see from some of the other luxury houses, LVMH had 14% sales growth. They beat on earnings. The real star in the portfolio, folks that listen to our interview with Anish will know that there are quite a lot of different components of LVMH.
75 house of brands, yeah.
Yeah, but selective retailing, which is one of the divisions, but most noteworthy probably brand there is Sephora. But overall, selective retailing was up 25%. So it seems like the beauty component across, pretty much the world continues to, pretty dramatically outperform the rest of retail. Let's
flip the script a little bit to economic things. We like to talk about economic issues in the pod. Now you're seeing some evidence of goods deflation, which has kind of a mixed impact on plus or minuses. Talk about what you see and what you think about it.
Well, if folks listened to my predictions last week or read the articles that I did on Forbes, you'll know that I pointed out that I thought flat was going to be the new up for many retailers. And part of the reason for that, not the only reason, was the potential for not just disinflation, i.e. the slowing of inflation, but actual deflation. Now, I've heard various folks, including Ira Kalish from Deloitte that we had on the podcast, talk about this, and that generally speaking, we're seeing continued, relatively high inflation in services because of labor costs, but actually some deflation in goods, particularly commodities. Well, anyway, a report came out that put more, meat on the bones in terms of some of the specifics. And what that study showed was that overall, the annualized rate of deflation for the back half of last year was negative 3.7. So that's pretty significant when you think that we were looking at goods inflation, inflation that was 3 to 9%.
Would this include grocery? Because there's still inflationary pressures on grocery. Is this an overall number?
I believe this does include grocery. And one of the things that's going on in grocery is there are some commodities that have dropped, prices have dropped a lot, like eggs, for example, right? So it is, this would affect you as a retailer in different ways, depending upon what categories you're in. But actually and I didn't decide to include this in kind of a deep dive around the earnings, but one of our favorite retailers, Tractor Supply, reported their earnings last week, and their sales were actually down a little bit. Now, some of that is they're comparing to these amazing COVID numbers because of some of the categories they're in. They benefited disproportionately in addition to just being really good at what they do. But they also cited some deflation as something that they expect to continue to encounter. So part of their outlook, which basically said they're going to be lucky. I didn't know that they were going to say this when I made my prediction, but they basically said, we're going to be lucky to be flat because of some of these forces. So it's interesting to see how this will play out.
Well, that's good. Great wrap on the news. Now I wanted to finish with one quick note. Congrats out to Michelle Poole from a great interview that we had with Michelle on her describing all the great things that were going on for Crocs. She announced her retirement this week and is moving on. What a success! What a way to go and lead the company in such a great state. It's such a success story.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why we did an encore episode with Michelle, so we repeated the episode a couple months back from when we talked to her, I guess about 2 years ago, was that at the time Crocs, we first talked to her, Crocs was doing incredibly well, but they've just continued to go to new heights. So it's great to see her go out on a very much a high note.
All right, let's get to our great interview with Jane Ewing from Walmart. But first, a few words from our presenting sponsor, Celonis. Want to ramp up speed and productivity for your entire retail operation? In the Celonis Process Mining for Dummies Handbook, we show you how Celonis process mining technology enhanced with process intelligent AI, can help you streamline performance across your entire retail business so you can drive lasting value from end to end. That means purchasing, supply chain, omni-channel execution, merchandising, and customer service processes, all managed and optimized through one powerful software solution. To get your free copy of Process Mining for Dummies and see how it's generated millions in value for brands around the world like Aldi, Globus, and Edeka, head to Celonis.com/remarkable retail. Jane, welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us in the massive halls of the NRF show here, live in person. Steve and I, it's our favorite time to interview folks when we're live in person, so thanks so much for making time and sitting down with us.
Of course. I'm just happy I found you in the mess.
It's the first test.
Yeah, I think next time I might put one of those Apple Eye trackers on us, and then we can all find each other. But anyway, thank you for making the effort, and thanks for joining us. So why don't we start out a little bit about yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, kind of personal, professional journey, and what you do for a living.
Great. So Jane Ewing. I'm the lead the corporate sustainability team at Walmart. I've been at Walmart for 11 years, done a variety of different roles, quite a few of them in international, also in our US business. And prior to that, I actually grew up in the drinks industry. So I worked for Diageo for many years in several different countries around the world. As you can hear, I'm not from Arkansas. So
Yeah, I was going to say,
strong.
What part of Arkansas is that? I can't quite place it.
Northwest.
Yeah, Northwest.
Yeah.
Well, we interviewed one of your counterparts, Judith McKenna, earlier in the year. So you had a similar accent, I think, the two of you.
Absolutely, yeah.
The two of you. Let's talk about how you got to this role in sustainability, because it's an interesting role both culturally and professionally, right? And I talk to people who kind of come to it. Some come from a tech perspective, some come from an intersection of personal and professional objectives, and some come to it just because it's a great, very interesting, developing area, right? And I looked at your background, and you were top merchant, right? And top merchants, when I look at sustainability files, we'll get into this a bit later, we talk about ambitions and we talk about these things. I'm pretty sure when you were the merchant, your team didn't have ambition to have category growth. You're like, we got numbers and we're going to hit them. So talk about that, the organization around how you guys go to set your business and sustainability, and then this cultural thing and why you chose to do what you did.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So it definitely wasn't part of my plan. I got more and more involved in sustainability as part of different roles I'd had over the years, and the need in the world to do more was very, very compelling. And so even though I've spent most of my career in frontline P&L roles, I kind of stepped out of that to take on this role. But the amazing thing about it is I get to work with the whole organization on their initiatives, and so it's been a real incredible journey. It's been the most impactful role I've ever had in my career. So interesting. And talk about the structure of sustainability department or role at Walmart. How many people are involved? And it's a vast. It's a big file, right? It's a big remit. So how do you tackle that? Yeah, so we sit within our corporate affairs function. We're a relatively small team, and we, as I said, partner with the different segments in the business. But we like to say sustainability is everybody's job.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So my small team's role, I have a small team of subject matter experts. And then another part of the team are what we call the business acceleration team, and they literally work with the merchants to help drive sustainability initiatives across all of our categories.
So kind of a mix of strategists and probably some technical folks, right? Because it can get very technical, right?
Exactly, yeah. We have a couple of experts on climate, waste, packaging, and plastics.
And what would you say are kind of the top notes of your objectives, Walmart's objectives? I know it was the Gigatron project.
Gigaton, yeah.
Gigaton. I think of like those characters in Transformers sometimes.
Yeah, right.
So talk about that, or whatever you see as the big objective.
Yeah, sure. So at a macro level, our mission is to become a regenerative company, and we have this whole idea of how do we put people and planet at the heart of all of our decisions, and that is way beyond sustainability. It also encompasses opportunity for the people that work for us, community and the role we play in the communities we operate, ethics and integrity, like how we do business, in addition to sustainability. And then in sustainability specifically, we have goals around climate, nature, waste, and then people in supply chains. So quite a complex set of goals. They are linked in many different ways, but we work against each of those every single day.
And I want to talk a little bit more specifically about the project Gigaton or Gigatron or whatever we want to call it. But my sense is that Walmart has been pretty committed to sustainability for quite a long time. Is that right? And maybe just a sense of how it's evolved or accelerated or gotten higher and higher priority.
Yeah, it's actually a great story. It's one we use a lot. So it was actually 2005, Hurricane Katrina, when Walmart was on the ground helping the community after that event. And there's a very wonderful photograph of our Walmart trucks lined up outside
You were the
New
first
Orleans.
there. You guys were the first there with the water.
And that photograph is in Doug McMillan in our CEO's office, and we see it every day, and it's in the halls. And Lee Scott, who was our CEO at the time, said, how can we be that good of a company every day? How do we use our scale for good? And it was around that time that he set the first sustainability goals. We also saw the devastating impact of climate change was having on our customers, on our associates, on our communities. So we've been working on it since then, so it's definitely not a new thing. Some of the goals that we set back then we're still working on, and we're making great progress, but a lot more to do. And actually it was 2020 where we said we need to double down, we need to go again, and that's where Doug McMillan made the commitment to becoming a regenerative company.
And is that essentially what the Project Gigaton is about, or is that something?
Gigaton is a piece of that puzzle.
Okay.
So Gigaton actually started back in 2017, and the idea was how do we engage our suppliers? How do we drive collective action? Like, none of us can do this on our own. And so we started by saying, look, some of this work is hard, but how do we get going? Let's not wait. Let's not wait for perfection. So we encourage suppliers to join Project Gigaton, to set some goals, and then to start reporting progress against those goals. So we're pretty excited about, the movement that's created. We've had over 5,000 suppliers involved. We've reported over 750 million metric tons of emissions avoided or reduced, and we're about to report again in a few weeks for last year's numbers. So really just trying to help supply, because if I'm a big supplier, I've probably got a sustainability team. Some of this work, I'm driving it. The smaller and medium suppliers, we're trying to help. We've provided some tools within Project Gigan and trying to help them on that journey.
I think that's so exciting, and it's nice to see companies of all sorts, when you're such a big player and so influential, not only to make that statement, because you can affect not only your own business goals, but you can affect the culture, I would think, and be able to help the smaller players that may have great intentions, but they don't necessarily have the resources to do it. So that's very exciting.
Picking up on this global idea, of course, it's a global crisis, and we're working, and you've got a lot of your vendors are global players, you're global. At the ground level, recycling programs are like, we're down to the municipal levels. And country by country, they have different priorities, right? Some countries are farther behind. They've got, hey, listen, give us a chance to catch up. How do you stitch that all together on a global platform with ambitions and objectives?
Yeah, we try and get a good combination of how do we meet people where they're at and keep moving them on the journey, and then how do we make sure we're sharing learnings and best practices across different markets. A good idea can come from anywhere, right? So where can we take ideas from one and implement them in the other?
Yeah. Let's talk about the customer, the voice of the customer. So, voice of the customer rules Walmart in your traditional business. How does it infuse your goals, objectives? Customers are funny people, right? They say one thing and do another. Talk about the customer perspective.
We always start with the customer. So it's Walmart's purpose. We help people save money so they can live better. We have a cheer that says who's number one? The customer. So we try and start every initiative with what's the customer problem we're trying to solve, or how can we delight our customers? And that's no different in the world of sustainability. Customers are telling us they want more sustainable products. They want to do the right thing. But we have to make it easy, and we have to make it affordable. And that's where we see Walmart coming in. This can't be something where they have to pay a dramatically huge premium to do the right thing. So we're really trying to help customers make the right choices, but make it easy and seamless for them.
Yeah. And that's that delta between what customers, their ambitions, and what they actually do once they show up at the till, right?
Exactly. They will do it, but it has to be affordable. Like, there's a hierarchy, of course, and... That's what we work on all the time.
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit more about that, because we've had a couple of guests on the podcast where we've talked just generally about, I would say, purpose driven, not necessarily sustainability specifically. And you do hear this kind of, I don't know if it's folklore or it's reality, particularly, the younger customer is all about mission and purpose and things like that. And then you see companies like Shein and Temu take off where it's not so obvious that lines up very well. And obviously Walmart being noted for low pricing. Do you feel a tension between, or is it a false choice, I guess, to think that it has to cost more to be sustainable? Or how do you balance your low price promise with meeting your goals?
Yeah, we work hard every single day to try and bring affordable, sustainable products to our customers. So if I'm a buyer, we've got some incredible buyers all across our organization that are working to fight for that customer every day, and they're looking at how do they buy the commodities more sustainably, how do they make sure packaging is as efficient and as effective as possible. So, there may be some puts and takes in terms of costs, but they're aiming to get to serving our customers with affordable products. And we've got tons of great examples. Our buyers on tabletop, they recently relaunched our cutlery. It used to be plastic forks and knives, forks, and those things are really, really unsustainable. They can't go in the recycling unit, and they've come up with a compostable product now, and it's the same price as the previous version, and obviously much better for the environment.
And merchants on the whole, in my experience of merchants, is they're pretty objective driven.
They certainly are.
Are there objectives that kind of flow down to the category level or the merchant level that connect to the sustainability initiatives?
Absolutely. So we've got those some of the global goals I mentioned, whether it be reduction in virgin plastic or recyclable, making sure packaging is recyclable. That flows down all the way down through to the merchant goals as well.
So maybe just kind of going forward, we talked a little bit about operating in all these different countries, but obviously sustainability not only hits the merchandising function, but supply chain. I believe you spoke yesterday at the supply chain part of this conference, and I imagine IT has to worry about all sorts of pieces. So how, when you've got such a big, complex organization, I imagine most of our listeners can imagine that Walmart's quite a large operation. I've spent some time in Bentonville and had a sense of all the complexities that you guys have to deal with. How do you bring all those different functions together, or do you have to deal with them kind of separately to make things move ahead?
A little bit of both. So at a macro level, the global goals are they're global goals. They're for everybody to be aware of. Not everybody has a role in each goal. Like the packaging goals, it's very much down to partnering with the merchants and the sourcing teams, whereas our waste goals impact everybody, but particularly our operations teams and our supply chain teams who work really hard every day to make sure we're diverting waste from landfill. So I think it's making sure that each group is clear on where they can make the biggest impact and having those goals filter down.
Sure. I'm sure it keeps you guys busy. I'm sort of stressed out just by thinking about all the pieces that you have to manage.
We were talking earlier about global issue, but very local as well. How does this all go down to the stores at the local level? I know Walmart exists to support the stores, and what's their role in this, and how can that get coordinated amongst the many stores that you have?
It's a great question. It goes back to that broader regeneration commitment of our role as pillars in the community, and we try and play a very active role in the community, whether that be as an employer, as a provider of affordable products to the local community. We do a lot of community grants and things. In terms of sustainability specifically, each store, club, distribution center, FC, they're working on divert waste.
Sure.
And getting getting us to zero waste. That's one of our goals. So that's on everybody's plate, and they're doing some incredible work to get us to that goal. Yeah. And then, as we think about things like food waste, we partner with the local communities. Hundreds of millions of pounds of food goes to the local food banks through Feeding America every single year. So there's a lot of different community initiatives that we play, and we take that role very, very seriously.
And you would say that's whether you're in Mexico or whether you're in other places you operate, you'd have that kind of same
Absolutely.
That same, just like your strategy, that kind of same philosophy. I think you led HR for international as well, right?
I did, yeah.
So you would know a lot about accountability. How do you drive accountability in your team and in the organization as a whole for the sustainability objectives?
It's actually pretty easy because we have a CEO and a board and a leadership team who fully buy into this, goal to becoming a regenerative company, to leaving things better than we found them, to doing the right things. And again, that filters down to our strategies and our goals. And when I first took on this role, it was not quite as evolved, and now people are coming to us and our team and asking for help versus us having to push in and say, "Hey, we can help you here." So
so they're asking for help.
They're asking, and they're pushing us to do more. And I see more and more leaders just owning this as part of their day job, because it can't be a separate thing that a small corporate function does if we're truly going to be successful.
It is a bit of the risk of your title. Okay, somebody's in charge of that. I don't have to worry about it. Oh, they look great, so I'm not going to really worry. But it doesn't sound. It sounds like it bottom up and top down and meet in the middle. Right, kind
absolutely.
So just going back for a second, I was in a conversation with somebody last night who's working on reducing product returns, and one of the observations, which I imagine is true at Walmart, is as e-commerce grows, e-commerce tends to have higher rates of returns. Is that a specific issue you guys are laser focused on, or have you figured it out? Maybe we can share some things that sell the solution to listeners.
I wish we had figured it out. I mean, in general, how we manage returns, how we serve the customer in the right way. I mean, a part of it goes down to making sure we get the customers, help customers to make the right choices in the first place, right? So our e-commerce and our product teams
upstream,
are really working hard. AI, things like that, to help make customers make the right choices. I think that's where it starts. Sure,
absolutely. Well, it's been a vexing issue for a long time, so eventually maybe people will figure it out. So as we wrap up, we have folks that listen that are with smaller businesses, folks that are with quite large businesses. What advice, if someone's really either starting on the journey of improved sustainability, or perhaps they've been working on it but they haven't gotten the traction that they would like, is there any general advice you would give to people to both make their journey more efficient, or maybe some mistakes that were made along the way that they could save themselves a little aggravation?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice is understand where you're at and start somewhere. Make some goals and get moving. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Perfection is the enemy of progress, right? So get moving. I think listen to your customers and listen to your associates. We've had a lot of people who are listening to their kids, right? Because they're a lot more aware of this, and you start to learn more about what customers and the future generation of customers want and expect, and they will make those choices with their dollars. So making sure you educate yourself. I've had to hugely educate myself in this role because there was a lot of things I didn't know. And some days you feel dumber than the day before because you learn something else new. But I think that continued curiosity and mindset to keep learning and keep asking those questions can really help you make progress.
Well, it's certainly a rapidly evolving area, and hopefully some of the newer technologies, like you mentioned, AI coming out, will help there. So I imagine people can pretty easily find out information about Walmart in general at walmart.com, but are there any particular resources you might point people to on the sustainability efforts at your company?
Yeah, on our corporate website, we have a Walmart Sustainability Hub where there's some information, there's some tools on there. There's things like the circular connector, where if you're an innovator on packaging, you can go on there, you can put your idea in there, excuse me, and it's completely open source, so anyone can take it as well. So it's pretty cool. We've had a bunch of excitement around that, and then we have our ESG reports on there if you want to go deeper into any specific topic. We have a number of different issue briefs where you can dive deeply into an area of your choice.
Excellent. Well, we'll certainly put links to that in our show notes. But thanks so much, Jane, for sharing all the great work that's going on at Walmart and your perspectives. And obviously, we wish you great success, because we will all benefit from the efforts that Walmart and others take in this area. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Steve, I've interviewed a lot of retail sustainability executives at different levels, and I might group them into three: passionate advocates, senior strategists who relish the challenge, scope, and complexity, and senior operators put in charge to get things done in a a very complicated file or highly mixed organizations. What did you think of Jane? She struck me as the latter.
Well, I hadn't thought about bucketing it that way, but I think that's a good way to do it. And I think I would agree with you. I guess I was struck by just how, I guess, coherent and cohesive the description of what Walmart has been doing for many years was or is. The other thing that just strikes me, and we did touch on it a little bit, is just how big companies, big important companies, can really shift the culture if they make certain things a priority. And not to get into kind of a political narrative about this, but you could argue that governments in general, at least the United States government, but others, in many cases, aren't able to do some of the things that corporations do. In this country, we've got companies, providing most of the health insurance, for example, right? So there's things that big companies can do to really do some good things for the world. But also, as she talked about, it's not necessarily a false choice between doing good and doing the right thing for the business, that those can be very much intertwined. And I was really impressed by how much that seemed to be the point of view that management was taking. And again, the commitment from the top. I think, Doug McMillan has been driving a lot of great change there. And this is just a piece of, I don't think he's going anywhere real soon, but will be a piece of his legacy. I also like the idea, which ties back to some of the things I've been focused on in looking at transformational leadership, is just, trying stuff, getting out there, walking the walk. There's a lot of kind of cliche statements about it, but I think Walmart seems to really be exemplifying that, and Jane's leadership seems like it's really made a difference.
Now, a fun factoid that we just learned actually today is that was Jane's last interview as the SVP of Sustainability. She's moved on to become the SVP International Operations of Walmart. So congratulations to Jane. That sounds like she was 3-4 years in sustainability and really left a great, I don't know if you call it a legacy, but left a great team, and now is taking on a bigger role. I don't know if bigger, but certainly a more traditional role in operations at Walmart.
Given all the growth that's going on in international at Walmart, that's a huge job. And I also think probably after she did the Remarkable Retail interview, there was really nothing more to accomplish in that role.
It's the crowning achievement. The crowning achievement.
Or knock over the mic. And
she went back to headquarters and said, I'm going to take that new role because I'm done.
My work is done here. Yes, very much so.
Right. All right, let's leave it there. Thanks for tuning in. New episodes of Season 8 presented by Celonis will show up every Tuesday, so be sure to tell your friends and colleagues in the retail industry all about us.
I'm Steve Dennis, author of the best-selling book Remarkable Retail and my new forthcoming book, Leaders Leap, Transforming Your Company at the Speed of Disruption, which will be published in April and is available for pre-order at booksellers everywhere. You can learn more about me, my consulting, and keynote speaking at stephenpdennis.com.
I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer retail growth consultant, keynote speaker, producer, and host of a series of retail trade podcasts, including this one. You can learn more about me on LinkedIn, and you can catch up with both of us in person at Shoptalk in Las Vegas this March. Safe travels, everyone.